intentionally, sometimes unintentionally. What do I mean by that? We actually do things that even unintentionally are sinful. And sometimes, remember how when you're in high school or even in elementary school, for those of you who are very bad, matter of fact, there's a kind of like, little kindergarten school they call the Little Rascals. You know what that means? These are really bad kids. So they're going to turn those rascals into good kids. Why? Because it means that when they bring them in there, they're going to change them. They're going to change them into good kids because they're rascals. So even when we're in the elementary school, even high school, right? Even in college too, that happened. We have bigger, rascals too in college. You know what I mean? So we do things to annoy our friends. We play, pranks on them. We actually tell bad jokes. We humiliate them. We really, do things that makes them so life uncomfortable for them. We become that annoyance to them. And some of us too, we've been victim of that too. I remember one time I went in a ball game with my dad. That was a while back though. It was kind of like, something that happened every year, especially during the summer tournament. So we have all those neighborhoods, rurals and, neighborhoods, would compete with other rurals, in the same town. And so I've never been to all those games. I used to listen to what's happening on the radio. But this time, we were in town and my dad decided, okay, let's go watch the game. So I went with him. So for me, in order to have a better view, it was not a big stadium and everything. It was a nice place, a soccer field, and where we have some bleachers. So I sat very top, so I could have a better view of what's happening down there. But I was sitting actually specifically right in front of the flag post, the flagpole, I should say. And so I was sitting there, and you know how it is, the line was there, to pull up the flag and pull it down, that kind of stuff. And so I was sitting there, not even knowing. But one thing I did not know, because in those places they don't have assigned, seats in that little stadium or that little soccer field there. So once you buy your ticket, you can choose to sit wherever you want. So there were like crazy fanatics, fans that actually were all over the place. And so I went up there with my dad and sat all the way up there, and so it happens that one of those guys realized that I'm a newcomer, a new face. But by respect of my dad, they didn't come directly to annoy me, but they're trying to play a prank on me. What did they do actually? They pulled that rope from the flagpole, and then they tie my pants with it. So I didn't know. So whenever, if I were to go and jump and stand up, and then I would feel something holding me back. And so that's what happened in the middle of the game when my team was going crazy and everybody, we were cheering up and we're doing all this. And then I stood up and I felt like I fell down, back down really fast. And I turned around and found out I've been anchored down on that flagpole there. And so right there, I tapped my dad and said, hey, here's what happened. And I realized that too. And he's trying to undo it, couldn't do it. And then he turned around and he saw some of the younger guys over there, a little bit older than I was at the time, but way, way younger than my dad. Those teenage guys, and probably close to their, being 19 or 20, probably early 20s. They're sitting there and then they're laughing. And so my dad kind of went and confronted them, and So it didn't turn out good because, the whole crowd and everything turned out to be, we were sitting in the wrong crowd because we were cheering for our team. We're sitting in the place of the enemy. So we're sitting there. And so this guy decided this is what he's going to do to me. You know how you are, fan, you always carry the color of your team with the jersey, whatever you're wearing to show support. So they quickly recognized that we were not part of the team, so that's why they did that. But the very reason that they did that to me was the fact that this is somebody else's spot. They wanted me to know it, but they didn't confront me by saying, "Hey, you're in the wrong spot," or whatever. Because they come for every game, every time. This is their spot. This is the group where they are. So they decided to play a prank on me and to make an example out of me and whatever. But the thing is, they almost threw me off the bleachers. So I couldn't come from all the top all the way down. They almost threw me off. I think one of the reasons why, I should say why they didn't do it, because they were a little bit intimidated, because at that time, because my dad was part of a, force, special force, whatever. So he had his service weapon with, and so they saw it and they kind of like, died down a little bit, but they were still aggressive, but not too much physical. So that my dad says, okay, you know what, we need to get out here. So he had this pocket knife, and then he cut that thing off my pants, and so I got free. But even coming down the bleachers, to go my way, they were like pushing me back and forth, and everything. It was very intense and I was so scared. In a sense, why did I bring this up to you anyway? Why? The reason is because I was explaining to you that, the idea of the body of sin can cause you to do other things. That's the reason why. Had it not been for the body of sin, I would have sitting there with my friends, my dad, enjoyed the game very quietly and peacefully. But because of the body of sin, this gentleman or this group of people decided, you know what, I'm going to teach him a lesson. They could have done something else. They could have done that. Have you ever seen people doing this because of the fact that somebody, I'm sure kids, you've done that too. You've done that to your teachers. They give you bad grades, and you go, you damage your teacher's car tires, or maybe the bicycle, or maybe the motorcycle, whatever vehicle they use. You've done something like that. You put glues on your teacher's chair. So when they sit down and the chair got glued with their pants and their clothes, whatever. So we've done things like that because of the fact of the body of sin. So that's what I'm talking about. It's the idea of the sin problem. It causes us to do things that are despicable, you know what I mean? We cannot even comprehend it. Sometimes people get shocked. Sometimes I'm telling you this right here. We know that. We know it because you ladies, some of you experience that. You've done that with your husband. So I can't believe you just done that. I can't believe you say something like that. Why did you do this to me? Well, the answer is because of the body of sin. You're going through divorce now. Okay, because of body of sin. Vice versa, husband and wife. These are not pleasant things, my friend. But there must be a way to live this life in spite of all these situations going on. I think that's what I'm trying to report to you. There must be a way, and that way is right here. It's only on you by having the willingness of making that step to say, okay, I understand the proposition here. This is what God proposes. Let me pick up on that. Okay, let me try this. Because like I said, I have been redeemed by the blood of the Lord for more than 30 years. So my friend, if I'm telling certain things, it means I have about like 30 something years of working with the Lord. That doesn't mean that the last 30 years of my life I've been perfect. oh my goodness, I've been the worst rascals ever in God's hand. Probably. I don't need to compare myself to another person. If God were to display my life in the open, would you probably like, or maybe would I like what I see? No, probably not. That's not the point right here. The point is there must be a time in your life where you make that turn, where you actually make that decision to say, okay, this is the way I'm going to go. Unfortunately, for many of you, you've done that, but you're still doing the same thing that Adam did. You keep making the wrong choice. And then you keep saying life is unfair. Life, yes, it's unfair for everybody. That's the reason why you have to make the right choice, because if you don't make it, the choice is going to be made for you. But the idea is, as long as you're still living on this life, you're going to keep complaining about how unfair life is for you. But the minute that you depart from this life, then you're going to see the reality of all these things that we've been talking about. And one of the ways that God is trying to help you, that's the reason why He gives you parents. We're going to talk about this later on when you have an opportunity to do so. That's the reason why it creates so much problem for those of you come up with the ideas of different type of parenting. I'm not talking about style. I'm talking about the idea of a family. You know, there's all this crazy stuff talking about modern family. What does that mean anyway? You know, the way you perceive things and all this stuff, they're not making your life better, my friend. They're making your life even worse than it's already been. You already have the sin problem that exists in this world, and then you come up with things that keep adding up more to that problem that already existed, so which you don't have a way of bringing a solution, let alone a perfect one. And God, in His own way, it tells you, just like He was watching the woman in the garden having a conversation with the devil, with the serpent, if I may use Bible's word here. God didn't intervene in that moment to say, the devil, leave the woman alone. No, that's not the case here. God will never intervene in your life to say, okay, my friend, don't go that way. God actually gives you the direction. It's up to you to decide, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to follow what God says. I just have to talk to you about this because just before I came here, I've been reviewing the last video that I posted on YouTube where I was talking about the idea of atheism. And I got to think about this thing. I was talking about the fact that there's no way a person can be an atheist. And I even say on the air that anybody who wants to challenge me in this, you can do so. I don't mind. I will sit with you and talk to you, so you can prove to me how you can be an atheist. There's no way you can, because of this thing we're talking about, the body of sin. Because in order for you to be that person you want to be, it would have been for you that you would have been born a different way. I can't even explain it, because there's no way you can be born a different way. We all were born sinners. So the fact that we're born sinners, we all were born sinners, therefore we are under that law. We are under that body of sin. Okay? So it doesn't matter whether you say, oh, I do not believe there's God. I do not believe there's such a thing called God. It's a myth and everything. It doesn't change the fact. Just because you say it, just because you comport yourself in that direction, in that manner, it doesn't change the fact. So you call yourself an atheist because of the fact that you believe there's no God. There's no such thing. You can believe, like I said, a person can believe with all his or her heart that a horse can fly. That doesn't change the fact that horses don't fly. You will never find a horse flying. at least not in this realm of life. I don't know any other life. What I mean by that, in God's kingdom, if that would be the case, because God can do anything. But in our own realm of life, existence here, there's no such thing. Okay? There was a time that we said that you will never see a car flying. Now, there's a possibility you might see one. Why? Because they develop technology to make car to fly. Well, there's a possibility. I understand that. But there are certain things in life you can do all you want, because the way you were born, like we explained to you earlier, because of the fact the way you were born, you cannot change the nature. See, you will never see. Matter of fact, you guys have to go and check out my books. You will never see a person being born differently. As far what I'm saying is, I'm not talking about the method. I'm talking about differently being born, which means you will never see a person being born being half a horse and half a person. You will never see a person giving birth to a child like you see a chicken will lay egg. You will never see that a person being born like a mermaid. Is there such a thing? I don't know. There's no such thing. Why? Because we are going to reproduce of our own kind. You can't have two different things that, to bring about one life. It's impossible in God's reality of life. It doesn't work that way. So all these things that we're putting in our head driving us away from the reality of what God is trying to do. And the further away we go, the harder it's going to be for you to come back, because that's the reason why we have all these ideas out there, and also a lot of false religion being formed because of those ideas. So we got to be careful, like what we talked about before in those videos, that to whom you listen to and those ideas. If those things that you're listening to, they are contrary to what God says, then you better not listen to them, no matter how good the speaker may be or how funny he may be, whatever. I'm talking even in church. Not even talking about outside the realm of the spiritual, the Christian circle. I'm talking about even in the Christian circle environment, the talk show radios, the television shows and all those stuff. You got to learn to make that decision with your fingers, and the things, that kind of stuff. The thing that you listen in your car radio. So we said that we spent quite a few minutes in this to talk about the body of sin. Let me review that again. It is the idea of sin problem. It is to know or to recognize that there is such a thing called sin. The reality of this thing that brought God himself to come down from heaven, to become man and to live, to die, and to save us from this law of sin existing in life. Like I said, with the whole chapter 6 of the book of Romans. It is that invisible force that propels us to act maliciously, intentionally, and sometimes unintentionally with our close family members and friends. The same way we see it happen with Cain and Abel when he slew his younger brother, Cain. The thoughts which we allow is another idea. The thought that we allow to come in, allow to form in our minds, to do evil, to destroy the world. Like, for instance, we talked about this before. You see, now today, I just don't want to get involved in about politics and stuff like that. But just because I just mentioned this, so it will give you a clear understanding of what I'm trying to say here. Think about all this, my friend. Why would the world leaders, those nations out there, why? Now, some of you are going to really get mad at me by saying this, but think about it. If you really think about it deeply, okay, why would all those nations trying to accumulate all those weapons? Why? It's the idea is to do evil to other people. Sometimes I have said that would it be better if, for instance, that all the nations instead of having deadly weapons, so they can have something like a tranquilizer or something like that, or something that when you shoot somebody, you only inflict pain, but he won't kill. So that way people can go back. But there has to be rules actually throughout this world that says, okay, this is how it's going to be. We'll never use deadly weapons. I think I'm kind of like, let the imagination get, the best of me. But I think people would live, wouldn't have that. But they would say, some people would say, because I share that with other people, then people would not fear anybody because they know even they go to war, there's not going to be death, this and this and that and this. I understand that. But my point is, it is the thoughts which we allow to form in our minds to do evil, to destroy the world. Look at just recently, in the last few years, you hear this idea of North Korea become a nuclear nation. And you see the nation of Iran is actually assemble up, the kind of thing to do the same thing. But the question, why would they want that? Don't tell me, you need to protect yourself, but from what? Ask this question. The whole thing behind the whole thing is to do evil. There's no question about it. It's to destroy life, to destroy the world. When the bomb remember those wars in the past, the one that we watched documentaries about them, or we read books about them, or news on TVs and everything. We read about all this stuff. Life was destroyed. All these things. We had their revolution. They necessitated those wars. I can understand what you're saying. I'm not saying that the Bible talks about that there's going to be war, but the thing is, we're not encouraged. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. We're not encouraged, to start war. We're not encouraged to do that. That's the reason why I think they built this thing called United Nations, so that people can sit and talk. There's the word again. They can sit and talk to see if we can find a very calm way and diplomatic way to resolve our differences. There's always going to be a difference, says among us. But can we resolve our conflict in a very calm and humane way? And sometimes because we can't, that's what happened. That's the reason why we have wars. But is it necessary to have wars? That's the thing. We're not encouraged, because that's what happened. The thoughts which allowed to form in our minds to do evil, to destroy the world, even individually, that happened. And sadly, the unfortunate hatred that we muster in our hearts, which keep us from loving one another as the Lord commands. The Lord commands. What does it say? Look at John chapter 15, verse 12. Let me see if I can find it really for you. Really what it says. John chapter 15. All right, where is John chapter 15? It's right here. And verse 12 says, "This is my commandment, that ye love one another as I have loved you." My goodness, what am I going to do with this when there's war? Where's the love here? What happened is, and this is the unfortunate hatred that we muster. This is what we do in our hearts, which keep us from loving one another. And look at verse 17, the same chapter. "These things I command you, that ye love one another." That ye love one another. How are we going to do that? I'm not talking about family members only. We're talking about neighbors. Then you're talking about nations, Well, we are one race. What is the reason for us to try to destroy each other? Why? What is the reason behind all these things? You understand? It doesn't bring any satisfaction, even from a point where you're trying to defend yourself, okay? Let's say this way. Let's say you are minding your own business, something come along and somebody try to attack you. Even in the heat of the moment, you're trying to defend yourself. there is a possibility in you that says, okay, why am I, you want to hurt that person because that's the first reaction you have. But even if you were to hurt this person, after that you will find out, why in the world I did that? Why? Because you're a human. We're supposed to love each other. You know, so the idea that comes in your head, sometimes people get paid for these things. You know, like you see in movies, they call somebody a hitman. What does that mean? It means that person, his job is killing people for money. I hope there's no such a thing in real life. I don't know. So this idea of hating each other, that's what's happening here. So you understand what I'm trying to say to you, right? We have to do our best, especially for those of us who are now under no condemnation because of the law of the Spirit of life in Christ Jesus. You are set free, okay, from the law of sin and death. There should be no reason for you to try to hate another person, let alone to hurt them in the physical way or other ways that possible. Because sometimes you may not hurt somebody physically, but emotionally, you know, you destroy that person. You know, that kind of stuff. I hope we will talk more about that when you have a chance, specifically when talking about certain things. So now we got to explain more of what we're talking of this passage now. So fourthly, I would say, for he that is dead is freed from sin. This is what we read from verse 7 of chapter 6, Romans chapter 6. For he that is dead is freed from sin. We got to talk about this a little bit, you know. And so the problem is, when did we die? So you see that if you understand, we died from John, Romans. I keep saying John, chapter 5, verses 2 to 5, and he says, by whom also we have access by faith into this grace wherein we stand and rejoice in hope of the glory of God. And not only so, but we glory in tribulation also, that tribulation work of patience, patient experience, and experience hope. And hope maketh ashamed, because the love of God is shed abroad in our hearts, and the Holy Ghost, which is given unto us. So in Romans chapter 6, no, actually, I just read the wrong passage. Sorry about that. I meant to read chapter 6, verses 2 to 5. It says, the question, when did we die? With the question here is, we will answer that questions from verse 1. For God forbid, how shall we that are dead to sin live any longer therein? Verse 3 says, know ye not that so many of us were baptized, yeah, that's what I'm looking for, unto Jesus Christ, were baptized unto his death. That's a question he says. Know ye not that so many of us, as were baptized into Jesus Christ, were baptized into his death? I could have put that word also. It's not there, but it's not my mind to put anything extra in there. Therefore, we are buried with him by baptism to death, that like as Christ was raised up from the dead by the glory of the Father, even so we also should walk in newness of life. And verse 7, so for if we have been planted together in the likeness of his death, we shall be also in the likeness of his resurrection. So that's the answer of this. Now, you see the word there, baptism. What does that mean? It means identification. It literally means identification. The word baptism, that's what it means. In some way, speaking of baptisms, we are telling the world with whom we are associating ourselves with. Do you follow what I'm saying? In some ways, because of baptism, that's what we're telling the world. We're telling them this is who we're associating ourselves with. Other times, we can see that people will name a business, a place, a monument erected, and a person given a new name or a special title. All these refer to one common reality, which is baptism. It is to tell openly with whom you belong to. with whom you have a relationship, and to recognize the type of relationship there is. For example, a man and a woman in a romantic relationship define their relationship through baptism, either a dating relationship or being engaged, relationship, or marriage relationship, which means they identify themselves as such. What I'm talking about here? Although you will never say, they would necessarily say that, hey, we just got baptized for either of these forms of relationship I just mentioned, but they identify themselves with these relationships to tell what they are doing together. That's the whole reason they have that. You see, you have the dating relationship. They get to a point they move up the ladder. They from dating, now they're engaged, and now they get to a point where they're married. That's beautiful, right? And so that's what it means. So when they're dating, that's the identification, telling whoever around, whoever they meet, oh, this is so and so, we are dating. So they identify themselves with that type of relationship. So that's baptism. That's what it means. When they are engaged, everybody, the lady, you can see they're showing the rings, the engagement rings. And so they can prove to you or whoever they are talking to, this is where we are in our relationship. We've been baptized, being engaged. They identify themselves as romantically engaged in that type. So moving closer to the real thing, and then finally they're married. Okay, so that's what it means. So the example is clear here. So identification, it's what baptism means. Now, it is the same with titles received in the workplace to formally know how to address everyone involved around the workforce of every department, basically to identify everybody by what they are being called. See that in the workplace. Sometimes somebody move, from the food chain, coming from bottom and all the way. So when they give a new title, it's to identify this person in this workplace so people can address him or to respond to who, that kind of stuff. That's what it means. That's what they're doing here. So what you see here is a form of baptism, to identify this person by that title on the position and the department and the workforce where the person works. Okay, so it is no different. That the work of salvation brought us that freedom, that liberty that we could not do on our own, from the bondage of sin. The same thing. That's what Jesus did for us on the cross. Jesus died for our sins. Now I put sins as plural. Why? Because we're going to study this. There's the sin past, there's a present, and also there's a future. Jesus died for all of them.